Welcome to Reality TV Podcast. The first update we have today is centered on a major health struggle and what seems to be a real turning point. We're kicking off this deep dive with an update from Brandi Glanville, formerly of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And it's incredibly raw, frankly, an agonizing personal update. But it seems to mark a huge turning point after what she's described as 2 years of just complete hell.
Hell is not an overstatement at all when you actually get into the details she shared. And what really stands out immediately is just the incredible isolation that this invisible battle caused her. I mean, Brandi, she's known for this very public, very outgoing personality.
Right. Always out there.
Exactly. And she revealed she's been pretty much in her house for 2 years. She even said she's turned into an introvert. And that forced retreat from everything, just because of a mysterious ailment, it fundamentally altered her entire life.
That shift is so striking, to go from being constantly on, constantly in the public eye to, total seclusion. It just speaks volumes about how severe the physical symptoms must have been.
For sure.
But the good news, the major breakthrough, is that she finally got an official diagnosis.
Yeah.
Very recently. She mentioned it was just yesterday.
Wow.
And you could feel the relief in her voice. She said she's thrilled just to finally have an answer.
And that moment of diagnosis is so critical for anyone dealing with a chronic illness. It just ends that exhausting cycle of not knowing, of ambiguity. And for public figures, that cycle is even more painful because they're constantly getting questions from the public and, often facing skepticism.
Oh, absolutely.
So Brandi's relief, it tells us that for 2 whole years, she wasn't just battling the illness itself. She was battling the mental burden of not knowing why her body was failing her.
And the physical and emotional toll she described, it's truly sobering. She talked about the physical side of it, often finding herself just sitting down and then being physically unable to get up. That complete loss of control over basic movements is it's terrifying to think about. And that physical paralysis, it led to a much darker place emotionally. She was really brave in sharing that she had moments where she thought, I don't want to live this life. And she called those thoughts really frightening. And it's specifically because they were so uncharacteristic for her. I mean, we know her as this resilient, always ready to fight personality.
It's a profound moment of vulnerability. It really highlights that direct link between, chronic, undiagnosed physical suffering and a severe mental health crisis.
It really does. And it also brings into sharp focus the issue of medical gaslighting that so many people face when they have symptoms that don't fit a simple, immediate diagnosis.
And we have to remember the context here, right? Just last month, she was talking publicly about battling what she believed was a parasite.
Exactly. That parasite theory, it became part of her public story. It was a provisional explanation she was just sort of clinging to out of desperation.
Yeah.
And the contrast between that earlier, almost simple theory, a parasite, and this new official diagnosis, it just underscores the difficult journey of these invisible illnesses.
That's a really good point. When you're a reality star, there's so much pressure to provide a neat, dramatic answer. The public wants a clear villain, even if that villain is, a tiny organism.
And the production machine often encourages that kind of explanation because it creates a clear storyline. It's easy to follow. Brandi's openness here, it really forces us to confront how we, as the audience, often demand a simple narrative for these really complex health issues.
And even with the diagnosis, she's very clear that she still faces a long road ahead to get fully better. So this isn't a simple fix, it's a chronic management situation.
What this tells us about the public narrative is so crucial. Reality TV casts are expected to be perpetually robust, right? Fighting with co-stars, these external battles. When they face a silent, internal, grueling battle like a chronic illness, the system just doesn't know how to handle it, and so the person often retreats.
It definitely raises a significant question about the support systems that are available to people in this really transactional industry, and we should probably keep that in mind as we transition to our next segment. Okay, so moving now from those deeply personal battles and that isolation to professional ones, we're looking at a high-stakes fallout that has completely divided the RHOBH cast. And it's a perfect example of those transactional relationships we just talked about. I'm talking about the dissolution of Sutton Stracke's working and personal relationship with her former assistant, Avi Gabe.
This is such a classic reality television flashpoint because it just exposes that fundamental conflict between the logic of employment and the logic of television casting. Sutton's entire defense, which she's repeated over and over, is that letting Avi go was purely a business decision.
Yes, and she rooted that decision in this very practical, almost surgical logic. She explained her needs just changed. Her kids weren't living in the house anymore, and she no longer had the retail storefront that needed tending to. Her rationale was, I just didn't need anybody in my house all the time.
And she even questioned why everyone, the cast, the audience, was making such a huge deal out of letting staff go. Which, from a purely business management perspective, she has a point. Companies downsize, roles change, staff are let go all the time without it becoming this huge feud.
But that is where the reality TV ecosystem just completely warps reality.
Yeah.
The moment that relationship becomes a key part of the show, a source of humor, of character insight, it just ceases to be purely business.
It can't be.
And the shocking consequence for Sutton was her admission that she was genuinely surprised. Surprised that terminating the working relationship also, in her words, terminated the friendship as well. By her own account, they are no longer speaking.
And that surprise, it reveals such a fundamental blind spot about how relationships work in this specific environment.
Yeah.
For Sutton, the friendship was sort of secondary to the paycheck. But for Avi, and maybe more importantly for the millions of viewers, the employment was just the structure for what felt like a genuinely dynamic and intimate relationship. It felt like family. So when Sutton pulled the employment rug out, she erased the entire structure of that relationship, personal and professional.
And the reaction from her co-stars just confirms that external perception. Kyle Richards, for example, she gave a key insight into their on-screen chemistry. She noted that while Sutton could be a little challenging, Avi seemed to know how to respond to her in a sort of funny way and brush it off.
Right. So he wasn't just organizing her closet. He was a dynamic partner in her comedic moments. He was an emotional buffer. He was a character in his own right.
And Bazoma St. John's reaction was one of complete disbelief in that business decision narrative. She was deeply shocked. She called Avi such an integral part of her day-to-day life. And she explicitly said that something crazy detrimental had to have happened for Sutton to cut him off like that.
So Bazoma basically just dismissed Sutton's business explanation entirely. She's implying there had to have been a deeper, unspoken personal conflict that was the real catalyst.
And Jennifer Tilly, who sees it from more of a viewer's perspective, she highlighted why the audience was so invested. She explained that fans saw Avi more as a member of the family because of their funny and often really heartwarming on-screen exchanges. People were rooting for their personal bond, not her P&L statement.
When you sign on to do reality TV, you cannot fire a character without consequence. And those consequences were just immediately amplified by this masterful red carpet twist executed by Garcelle Beauvais.
This was just brilliant strategic maneuvering. Garcelle brought Avi as her guest to the premiere of her Lifetime series, Taken at a Truck Stop, a Black Girl Missing movie. It was a clear, calculated move to place Avi right back into Sutton's world, but under the banner of a rival co-star.
The soundbite reaction tells the whole story. Dorit Kemsley's immediate response was just perfection. Oh, you got to be kidding. Oh, shit. That is the unfiltered realization that this was an intentional statement, a declaration of an alliance against Sutton.
And Kyle Richards was completely convinced. She claimed there was an absolute agenda. She argued that both Garcelle and Avi knew that taking that photo together, it would go everywhere, and that it was designed to incite commentary and ignite the feud publicly.
But this is where we need to challenge that agenda interpretation a little bit, right? Isn't it also possible that Garcelle, who knows how transactional and cruel these reality TV dismissals can be, was genuinely supporting a friend who had just been publicly discarded?
That's a great point.
Or is the agenda just the narrative that the fired friend and his new allies chose to create? On these shows, loyalty and sabotage often look exactly the same.
It's true. On the one hand, Sutton claims she was surprised. She said she had no idea that Garcelle liked Avi so much. But then she immediately conceded that they have a good long-term friendship.
A little contradictory.
A little bit. And then Jennifer Tilly agreed with Kyle, saying the move did seem a little bit deliberate. So the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Garcelle got to support her friend Avi and strategically position herself against Sutton, generating huge buzz in the process.
The deeper insight here is about the mandate of loyalty in reality TV. Sutton believed she was exempt from this rule because Avi was an employee. But the second Garcelle brought Avi into her orbit, the entire cast was forced to acknowledge that the rules of personal allegiance completely override the rules of business management. The staff member became a weapon in the social arsenal.
You just cannot separate the business decision from the personal consequence when your life is the television show. It's a harsh, expensive lesson. Okay, next, we're going to dive into two different shows where cast members are absolutely challenging how producers and co-stars control their on-screen narratives. This is the battle for the edit, the fight to make sure the story shown to the world aligns with your personal truth.
And this struggle is arguably the most fundamental conflict in the entire reality television genre. The cast provides all the content, but the network holds all the chips. They're the ultimate arbiters of truth, wielding the scissors to cut, paste, and frame a simple character narrative, often at the expense of nuance or integrity.
We'll start with Giudice and her dissatisfaction with how she was portrayed in Season 1 of Next Gen NYC. And Gia comes into this with a newly fortified platform. She was recently crowned the winner of Special Forces World's Toughest Test. And that success, it just lends her narrative of being strong and hardworking immense credibility.
Exactly. She earned a narrative of resilience. So now she's looking back at Next Gen NYC and seeing that success completely minimized. Her overall disappointment was just palpable when she said Season 1 was good, not my favorite. And the core reason, it's the classic reality TV grievance. She believes a lot was filmed that wasn't shown.
And this really just boils down to network prioritization. What version of Gia did the network think was the most commercially viable? And apparently it wasn't the hardworking professional. She specifically refuted the production narrative that focused on her commuting back and forth from Jersey and making it seem like it was so exhausting and that she was complaining about my work.
This is a perfect example of what we call manufactured relatability. Gia is the daughter of a major celebrity. She's likely living a pretty privileged life. So producers needed to ground her character for the audience by emphasizing some kind of struggle. And what's more relatable than complaining about a long commute?
Right. It's universal.
They leveraged that minor inconvenience to create a character arc. The slightly privileged millennial who whines about traffic, even though Gia insisted she is actually so grateful to work.
So the network prioritized amplifying this one small moment of perceived complaint to create a relatable, maybe slightly ungrateful character, instead of showing her genuine professional drive. And this is so evident in what they chose to omit.
It is. She gave a really clear, technical example of this editorial choice. She said, I had this huge Vince Camuto campaign that I did. They filmed the entire thing, which is a huge professional milestone for her. Yet the scene was edited down to just a quick moment or a picture of me walking out of the restaurant.
That is a staggering reduction. I mean, you spend days filming a high-profile campaign, a moment of real professional success. And the network decides that a 3-second clip of you leaving a restaurant provides more narrative utility than the actual work.
Absolutely. The professional win just lacks conflict, doesn't generate drama or highlight tension between people. The network needs usable segments, and if the campaign footage was too positive, too polished, or too focused on her job, it was just sacrificed. Gia's fight is fundamentally a fight for her identity as a serious young woman, not just a celebrity's kid.
Okay, now we're going to transition to an even more intense and, frankly, disturbing battle for the edit. This involves Demi Engman and Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, or CEL-OMW. And this is where that fight for narrative control intersects with very serious allegations of sexual assault, executive power, and disputed evidence.
This situation raises some profound ethical and contractual questions. The seriousness of the claimed sexual assault is immediately countered by the immense power of a network executive. The conflict centers around Lisa Vanderpump's claim that she reviewed all the footage of the incident with Marciano Burnett from Vanderpump Villa and suggested Demi was not being truthful about the assault.
That's an extraordinary claim. For an executive producer who has access to all the raw footage to say that, the network is essentially asserting a visual truth that completely contradicts the cast members' lived experience. But Demi provided a forceful, direct counter. She asserted unequivocally what I've said happened. I was sexually assaulted and inappropriately touched without my consent.
And here is the technical pivot point. Demi specified that there is footage in the hallway that would support her side of the story. But when she was challenged with the network's assertion that nothing happened, she escalated her response. She revealed the legal maneuvers she took.
She claimed that she sent a formal demand letter for that specific footage, hoping to prove my innocence. But the response she allegedly received was that they did not have access to the footage and could not share that with me.
That response is the ultimate power play in reality television production. I mean, networks are often contractually protected from sharing raw material, but to claim no access to crucial footage that could either prove or disprove a highly sensitive, potentially criminal claim, it creates an immense and unresolvable power imbalance. The network holds the key to the visual truth, yet denies the individual access to their own story.
It effectively silences them. And this battle over external facts immediately got intertwined with the internal cast feuds, specifically the one with Jesse and Gattacara, who was involved in an emotional affair with Marciano.
Demi detailed her direct conversation with Jesse about this. She described Jesse's energy during their talk as nervous, uncomfortable, and intensely SHTing her pants. Demi believes this nervousness was rooted in Jesse's untruthfulness about the whole situation.
And this feeds directly back into the editing critique, right? Demi believes the network purposefully omitted the part where she called out Jesse's dishonesty. Why would they do that?
Well, she suggests the editorial decision was strategic, to avoid planting any doubt about the person who actually chose to have a consensual affair. In essence, Demi is alleging the network protected Jesse's narrative purity, the victim of the affair, by suppressing any evidence that Jesse might be lying about other things. It keeps the narrative clean for the audience.
It's a compelling argument that the network is actively shaping the moral landscape of the show. And while the situation is incredibly grave, the feud introduced one of the most bizarre and widely reported allegations in recent reality history, the Fruity Pebbles controversy.
Okay, this is a moment where we just need to slow down for the sheer absurdity of it all. Yes, Jesse alleged that Brett Engman, Demi's husband, drank Demi's urine, a detail Jesse sensationally referred to as Fruity Pebbles.
The inclusion of a detail like that in a serious public feud is just... It's astonishing. It's hard to imagine what purpose it served beyond character assassination through shock value.
It's pure, unadulterated public scandal. It's designed to humiliate and distract from the central, serious allegations. It shifts the conversation from systemic issues to these, personal, intimate oddities.
And Demi's reaction to this public attack was intensely relatable. She found the topic incredibly awkward and noted the truly unfortunate liming. She said she had to go to Thanksgiving the next day.
Can you imagine having to sit across the table from your family after that hits the internet?
That juxtaposition is a perfect summation of the reality star experience. A moment of profound personal embarrassment immediately followed by a compulsory family holiday. The private life is just constantly invaded by the public narrative, no matter how absurd the details are. Despite this onslaught, though, the marital stand taken by Brett has been remarkably strong.
Brett offered this powerful public affirmation of his wife. He stated he has fallen more deeply in love with her through this process. He emphasized that his respect for her has only increased and called her his best friend. In a world where celebrity marriages often buckle under way less pressure, this move signals deep solidarity.
And despite everything, Demi still holds out hope for reconciliation with Jesse. She said 100% she'd make amends, and she drew a parallel to other reality TV friendships. She said, if Whitney and Michaela can become friends again, there's hope for Demi and Jesse.
That hope, juxtaposed against the complex, unresolved issue of the footage and the network's control. It just brings us back to that core conflict. Who controls the truth when the evidence is allegedly inaccessible, and the network protects its favored storylines? Demi's experience is just a high-stakes, deeply unsettling illustration of the ultimate risk these stars take.
It absolutely proves that in reality TV, the truth is always secondary to the story. All right, finally, let's travel south to Charleston for some updates on relationships, conflict, and a kind of funny logistical mix-up on a spinoff show. We're focusing on Molly O'Connell and Vanita Aspen from Southern Charm.
Charleston drama is generally more focused on loyalty and social politics than the heavy production dynamics we just discussed. But it still involves navigating public perception, especially when you're dating a known quantity like Shep Rose.
Let's start with Molly O'Connell and her recent fling with Shep. The question for any woman who dates Shep is always the same. Why didn't it work out? And Molly offered a very clean, rational breakup rationale. She said they were simply better as friends.
That is the ultimate PR exit strategy when you're dating a franchise anchor. And she summarized the core issues so succinctly and hilariously. She said the main reason it didn't progress was simple. It's Shep at the end of the day.
The classic Shep diagnosis. She essentially said his inherent personality traits, the commitment issues, the bachelor status, were the deciding factor. She wrapped it up by describing their relationship as a good time, not a long time. It lets her walk away with her reputation intact while delivering a perfect soundbite.
Exactly. She understood the assignment. She avoids being labeled as the scorned ex by positioning herself as the sensible friend who saw the inevitable. But even though the relationship is over, she's still part of the season 11 storyline, and she gave an interesting tease about her new role.
Yeah, she anticipates a dramatic one and admitted she's a little stressed out to watch it back. But the key tease is her warning of a pop-off moment where anger comes out. And she thinks this outburst will surprise people who only know her current, more restrained persona on the show.
This is a calculated attempt at character development. She's signaling to the audience and the producers that she's more than just a peripheral love interest. She's promising volatility and depth, potentially positioning herself for more airtime and conflict in the future. She's moving from being Shep's date to being a central character.
And before we move on to Vanita, we have to address the brief, amusing story of her being miscredited as Sarah on the spinoff Southern Hospitality.
This detail is fascinating because it illustrates how easily background people get mixed up in the rush of production. Molly explained it was purely practical. She only worked there for about a month and a half. She had braces, she didn't really talk much, and her mouth was often closed.
So because of temporary orthodontics and a quiet demeanor, she was literally confused with another hostess named Sarah. It's peak background character syndrome. A perfect illustration of the difference between being a star, where every detail is tracked, and being someone on the periphery, where you're basically interchangeable.
It really grounds the idea that not everyone on screen has the editorial team's full attention.
Okay, switching gears to Vanita Aspen. She gave some crucial updates about her allegiances and feuds heading into season 11. Specifically, her drama with Craig Conover.
Vanita's storyline is all about the social mandate of loyalty within these friend groups. She confirmed that her divide with Craig started after she took Paige DeSorbo's side following Paige and Craig's recent split.
That is a huge strategic decision for her, and she confirmed this allegiance definitely put us on the outs with Craig. In this group, the end of a main relationship immediately forces everyone else to pick a side, fracturing friendships across the whole cast.
Vanita made a calculated risk there. Craig is a franchise anchor. Paige is newer, but very popular. By siding with Paige, Vanita is aligning with the newer generation, maybe at the expense of stability with the show's older guard.
And her planned storyline for the new season reflects the emotional cost of that choice. She says her focus will be on her personal life and exploring the difficult ups and downs and friendships that aren't expected to go up and down.
That language suggests we're going to see her grappling with the unexpected consequences of standing against a major figure like Craig. She's dealing with the reality that her loyalty to Paige has created an unexpected enemy and complicated relationships she probably thought were stable.
And finally, we have the quick, dismissive update on Jarrett J.T. Thomas's move out of the country. Vanita just joked that they've already forgotten him.
And her final comment that his move to Bali checks suggests that while it's geographically dramatic, it's totally consistent with his personality. It's a quick, almost cold dismissal that neatly wraps up that character's place in the story.
Okay, let's unpack this. Looking back across all these updates, we've seen several core themes running through every single story, from Beverly Hills to Charleston.
The overarching theme is the extremely high cost of public life and that constant battle to control your own truth. We started with Brandi Glanville, highlighting the brutal consequence of a private health struggle turning into a very public, isolating battle.
Absolutely. And then there's the pervasive difficulty of setting boundaries between your professional life and personal relationships, like we saw in the Sutton and Avi saga. Sutton tried to make a clean, rational business break, but the transactional nature of reality TV immediately turned it into a deeply personal feud.
And critically, we saw that universal frustration over media narrative control, especially in the stories of Gia and Demi. One person is fighting to make sure her professional success isn't erased for a manufactured complaint, and the other is fighting to assert the reality of a traumatic experience against an executive team that suggests the visual evidence just isn't there.
If we connect all this to the bigger picture, what stands out is the profound paradox that these reality stars face. They rely on the edit to define who they are and to elevate their platform, but they simultaneously have to fight tooth and nail against that same edit when it's unfair or inaccurate.
That paradox of dependency and betrayal is central to the genre. The fame give them incredible opportunities, like Brandi's platform or Gia's campaigns, but it fundamentally strips away their agency over their own story. They're both the product and the victim of the machine.
We saw Sutton cut ties with a long-term friend for what she called a business decision, which led to immediate, intense isolation from that figure. So, considering the revelations from Brandi Glanville about the genuine, terrifying isolation that's caused by severe illness when you need your support system the most, does the transactional nature of reality TV fame ultimately leave its participants with fewer genuine, unconditional relationships to lean on when real life, like a sudden health crisis or a character assassination attempt hits? Something for you to mull or explore on your own.